welcome to RenewHydro's lunch webinar. Today, the Market and Economy Special. My name is Juliet, and I'm still responsible for the communication in RenewHydro. So these webinars are meant to offer glimpses into our ongoing research, and today we have a special edition with 3 presentations on market and economy topics, and the time will be extended a little bit until 12:15, so we hopefully have time for some questions as well. So today we'll have Arild Helseth from NTNU, Kamma Tyse from SINTEF Energy, and Mette Bjørndal from the Norwegian School of Economics. So we have a good spread of people as well. And I think we'll just get started at once with you, Arild. Vær så god.
Thank you. So my name is Arild Helseth. I'm professor at the Electricity Markets and Energy System Planning Group at the Department of Electric Energy. And I will talk about an open source modeling framework for long-term hydropower scheduling. We'll not go into very deep details, but I hope to give you a glimpse of what we are doing on this field at NTNU and also at SINTEF. So this initiative to make this open source model has been a part of the KSP project, a competence building project called RES 100, which has the long title of Modeling a 100% Renewable Electricity System. And this is a challenge that we see, that in order to model, analyze, and make conclusions on the future electricity system, we need to be able to model different technologies and at different time resolutions with different uncertainties than what we are today. And so this is important. So this project is supported by the Research Council of Norway and a set of hydropower producers, Statkraft, Hafslund, Agder, Lyse, Hydro, and also regulator NVE, with SINTEF leading the project and NTNU, Fraunhofer, and VTT as research partners. I assume that some of you are familiar with the market cross, where you have supply meeting demand, and in this figure I try to illustrate the typical market cross, where you have, this is the demand curve. Here it's quite steep, sign of little elasticity on demand, your price on the y-axis and quantity on the x-axis, and you have the supply curve, where you stack up all the supply technology according to the marginal cost. So you have this green line here is a zero marginal cost, typically wind and solar power, bidding around zero. And then you have some well-defined steps here, typically the thermal production with a well-defined marginal cost and a quantity. And then this blue curve here is the kind of the bidding curve for hydro, and defined by the water values. And by having supply meeting demand, you find the price, and this is important in simulating the future price, and also to compute this water value as part of such simulation programs. In the future, in a 100% renewable electricity system, if you target that, then we have to extract all the thermal stuff, and that leads to a quite different supply curve. You see the green line has become longer. And the water values, they will for sure become different then. And also I try to illustrate here on the demand curve that we have more flexibility, those small steps here. So the price cost will be different, the water values will be different, and we introduce new technologies that involves more variability and different types of uncertainty. So this green line here being extended shows that. And from a long-term scheduling or power market analysis point of view, we then need to understand better what these short-term, these changes in short-term variability and uncertainties, how this impact the price formation and the water values in long-term models. And essentially, we are used to work with long-term models that deal with long-term uncertainties and slow variations and a rather coarse technical description of the system, whereas now we need to more address also the finer time resolutions, the shorter term uncertainties, and different types of technical descriptions of different technologies. So that's the research challenge within the project. And to assess that, we SINTEF NTNU has developed a open source lab. I will not go into details of all of the stuff in this figure, but just to say that this targets the long-term scheduling of the system, stretching for several years, enough time to capture the dynamics of the large-scale resource that we have in the system. We read data from EMPS or samkjøringsmodell and formulate the scheduling problem as an optimization problem, solving it by SDDP, stochastic dual dynamic programming. And we're also able to simulate the system here. And the key advantage of this is, well, it's open source, as I said, but it's also set in a language, Julia, with the optimization package called JUMP, that is quite easy to read and comprehend compared to other programming languages that are compiled and more difficult to read and program in. So it's supposed to be a kind of low-level entry for new researchers or students to work on this code, and that opens up the what was before a black box. It opens a bit up and enable us as researchers and also the students to work on the constraints in a faster way and a different way. This is available at GitLab. So source code, you can check out there if you're interested. And what more? Yeah, so this has become a playground for us, researchers and students. And of course, others are welcome in to take a look, try out, and further develop this code. Many of the students that we have running the code, they use the Eden supercomputer at the NTNU. This is computationally intensive since we are dealing with optimization, large systems, and many resources and long time horizons and so on. So it takes long time to run it, but we have these figures that show that we have kind of a convergence for the model. It's seeking a optimal solution that takes some time and some iterations to have this convergence where you have an upper bound meeting a lower bound, and then you're within a convergence interval. And here on the lower right-hand side, you see a typical outcome of the model. It's a simulated price prognosis for a period of time ahead, and it addresses the full Nordic Northern European power system with the EMPS level of detail. And just to say a few words about one of the improvements compared to and what we have been doing research on is the so-called feasibility cuts or feasibility spaces to represent hydropower in an aggregated way as good as possible. The traditional way of seeking the optimal solution or the least cost dispatch in a system like the Norwegian shown here is to divide it into price areas. You see here the 9 price areas for Norway, and for each price area you have a aggregated representation of the hydropower, like these kind of wine glasses here. So it's a reservoir and a plant for each area, and by doing that, you typically tend to overestimate the flexibility of the hydro, and but in EMPS you have a certain way of dealing with that through the so-called tappefordeling. What we have done here is try to more formalize, deal with it in a more formalized manner through optimization. So we distribute the solution of the aggregated system into a detailed model, optimize it, get some feasibility cuts back, and then we end up with a kind of operating envelope for hydropower for each of these price areas that we can operate within with the aggregated hydropower. And this can be expressed in different capabilities such as energy production, reservoir volume, ramping capability, and so on. And you can have such operating envelopes on water cost level, on price area level, or even on national level if you want to do a cost description, depending on how much computation time you would like to have your model running on. And we constructed some graphical interfaces to play around with these operating envelopes to see the capabilities and constraints on the aggregated representation of hydro. So this is, I think this is quite interesting, and it has the potential, if it's done correctly and tested and so on, to replace perhaps or supplement the tappefordeling or detailed drawdown in a samkjøringsmodell EMPS model. And finally, just to sum up, we have activity on this open source model. We have a PhD project running on trying to improve on the mathematical modeling, and particularly working on these feasibility spaces. And we have several master theses, one completed last year on demand response, simulating the impact of demand response in the Northern European system. One is going now on more expansion planning of hydro and what's its impact on water values and prices. And another one trying to look at the impact of different levels of reserve capacity in these scheduling models. And in addition, of course, we do also research as researchers involved at SINTEF and NTNU side. So that was what I wanted to say on this topic.
Great, thank you very much, Arild. And I think we'll do all the questions at the end. So just make a note of the questions that you have with Arild, and we'll go straight to Kamma right now. Are you with us?
Hey. So in this presentation, I want to talk about the work done by SINTEF in RenewHydro 2.4 from about November 2025 until February 2026. So the overall goal of the project is to understand the relationship between hydraulic time delay in run-of-river hydropower and bids to the day-ahead market. But since we only have 10 minutes, I will spend most of the time on this slide just describing the problem statement. So, but first, we need to recap what a bidding curve is. So, for every hour or now every 15 minutes of the following day, the hydropower producers submit one bidding curve to the market, which is a piecewise linear curve that describes the relationship between various price scenarios. Just a second. Price scenarios that are located on the x-axis, and for each price scenario, the corresponding production volume that the hydropower producer is willing to produce for the given price. And also these bidding curves are required to be non-decreasing. The case studies that we conduct in this project are based on historical data from before the transition to 15-minute resolution. So just for the remainder of this presentation, I will refer to the bidding curves as hourly, even if they are now submitted every 15 minutes. Okay, so suppose now that we want to construct bidding curves for a watercourse that is characterized by a significant time delay. So in this map, we see the Namsen watercourse, which is centered on this river, Namsen, in Nord-Trøndelag. We see that if water is dispatched from this reservoir, Tyse, it takes 9 hours until it reaches the plant Tysedal, which is the largest plant in the watercourse. And then it takes almost 5 hours until the water flows along Namsen and reaches the downstream plant Nedre Fiskenfoss, which is the second largest plant in the watercourse. So this means that the bid production volumes at 1 hour of the bidding day is directly linked to the bid production volume of another hour in the bidding day. So since the bidding curves are submitted independently, this may cause a problem, since if, for example, the expected bid that accounts for production in Nedre Fiskenfoss is not accepted, water will still be dispatched from Tysedal that can then not be used. But luckily, bidding curves is not the only bidding type that is allowed in the day-ahead market. For example, block bids might be more suitable for accounting for this spatio-temporal relationship when we have time delay. So in a block bid, the production volume for several consecutive hours can be submitted together as one group that is either accepted or rejected as one unit. But even if there are several bidding types that are allowed in the day-ahead market, the problem of constructing the optimal bids is not a simple problem. In the literature, there exist several frameworks for constructing both bidding curves and block bids from, for example, stochastic optimization. And these account for time delay to varying extents. But these frameworks in the literature are not used much in actual operation when hydropower producers submit bids. Instead, they use a combination of deterministic approaches and heuristic algorithms that are not openly available, so we cannot say for certain. Okay, so the goal of this project is to understand the effect of time delay on the optimal bidding strategy. And to do that, we will use the production planning software SHOP for short-term hydro scheduling to construct bids and measure the effect of time delay and their performance. Constructing bidding curves is already implemented in SHOP, but not block bids. So if we have enough resources, we would want to do that maybe next year. But for now, as an initial investigation to get an understanding of how we can use stochastic optimization to construct bids and to understand the impact of time delay on the bids, we have used SHOP to construct bidding curves on a case study on this watercourse, Namsenvassdraget, and also construct bidding curves on hypothetical or a counterfactual model of the Namsen watercourse, where we model these time delays as being 0. Okay, so this slide describes how the bidding curves are constructed in SHOP, but since we don't have much time, I will just summarize very shortly how this is done. So the bidding curves are constructed by transforming the original optimization problem in SHOP, which is the maximization of problem, into a stochastic optimization problem where we account for several price scenarios. And then these price scenarios are used as the price points on the bidding curve. And then the solutions of the optimization problem for the production volumes are used as the volume points. And then finally, we linearly interpolate to obtain the bidding curves. Okay, so now back to the results of the case study. So we used SHOP to construct bidding curves for both the original Nansen watercourse and the Nansen watercourse without time delay. So for just an arbitrary day in the case study, we see here in the top plot the resulting bidding curves for the watercourse with time delay and then the bidding curves without time delay. We can see that the bidding curves are not equal, but they are very similar, and it's not obvious to say how they differ across all the bidding days in the case study. So how do we quantify their differences? There are several ways that this could be done, but we focused on measuring the difference in bid volume between the bidding curves. So for example, if we look at the first hour of the bidding day represented by the red curve at the bottom of the plots, and we want to measure the difference in bid volume at a given price point, for example at 40, we compute the bid volume for the watercourse without time delay minus the bid volume for the watercourse with time delay. But this was just for a specific price point, number 40. If we want to measure the difference in bid volume of this curve and this curve for the entire price range, we can compute the continuous average difference, which we can do by computing this integral. And we call the result the average volume difference, AVD. So this is just an arbitrary day in the case study, but if we compute the AVD for all of the bidding curves in the entire case study, we see that the AVD will follow this distribution. We see that the distribution is slightly skewed to the right and has a positive mean of 1.65. And this means that the bidding curves for the watercourse without time delay have slightly higher bid volumes than the bidding curves for the original watercourse. But this is expected because, for example, if the price is very high, then the watercourse without time delay can start to produce in all the plants instantly. But the watercourse with time delay would have to wait for the water to arrive. And in addition to the overall AVD, we also computed the AVD for varying system states. So we looked at the difference in bid volume for varying inflow to Nansen, which we see in this top plot. And this shows that the difference in bid volume is actually greatest when the inflow to Nansen is neither very high nor very low. And we also computed the AVD for varying storage volume in the reservoir Tyse, which is the reservoir that is directly upstream of the runoff river section. But here we cannot see a very clear pattern just from the mean and median AVD. And then we also looked at the difference in bid volume, not as an average of the entire price range, but we wanted to look at it at specific price points that represent specific price scenarios where we expect the bidding curves to behave differently for the two watercourses. So what we see in the top plot is the difference in bid volume at the extreme high price scenario that the price is, I think it was 500 euros per megawatt hour or something. And we see that in the first hours of the day, the difference between the bidding curves is very large, and then it decreases as time goes by. And we also looked at the difference in bid volume at the specific price points that represent scenarios where Tyse, the biggest plant in the watercourse, starts to produce above 100 megawatts sometime during the bidding day. And then this plot shows that then the volume difference increases for the first 2 hours after Tyse starts to produce. Okay, yeah, so that was a quick summary of what we do in this project, what we have done so far and what we want to do. When it comes to the case study of the impact of time delay on bidding curves, we could, of course, have done a more sophisticated statistical analysis or measured the difference between the bidding curves in other ways. For example, measure the correlation between consecutive bidding curves or the market performance. And We have not yet decided what we will do next. But anyway, I think that this study has given a better understanding of how stochastic optimization can be used to create bids and the impact of time delay. And then we will see what we will do next. Maybe we can start to look at block bidding instead. But we will see. Yeah, thank you.
And thank you very much, Kamma. And I think we'll go straight to Mette.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about flow-based market coupling. It's a subject that we worked on some years ago when it was introduced in the European market. And now it's time to take it up again, since it has been a part of the Nordic market, our market, for some time now. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how it is related to the nodal pricing, which is generally considered as being the benchmark for pricing or congestion management, locational pricing and congestion management in electricity markets. I'm going to relate it to the previous version of zonal pricing that we had in the Nordic market, which is based on available transfer capacities, calling the ATC model, sometimes also calling it the NTC model, and then going into what kind of choices this flow-based market coupling model entails when we are introducing it or implementing it in practice. And I'll see if I have time for the examples and some conclusions. So this was introduced in the CWE area in 2015. It was extended, this area was extended to the core area in the European market in 2022, and we introduced it in the Nordics in 2024. So this algorithm, Euphemia, which is calculating the electricity prices all over Europe, is optimizing or maximizing this welfare. And that's illustrated as this area under the demand curve and over the supply curve. And if there are any congestion, it's also a grid rent involved in this. So this algorithm is maximizing the welfare of the overall system. And then, of course, there are capacity constraints. This is a picture of the network model that is used in the European market. Seems like a lot of nodes, but some of these nodes are really big areas, like Germany. A single node. We have 5 in the Norwegian system and several in the Nordic system, but this is sort of the network model that is underlying this algorithm. Then there is also this description of the flow-based network model, telling us that it's called the power transfer distribution factor model, where we are modeling all the bidding areas in a meshed network, and where we also try to take into account this Kirchhoff's second law that is telling us that a power transfer is utilizing all paths in the grid. And that is something that is not modeled in the ATC model, but what is tried to be implemented in the FBMC model. So just to describe what is happening here, I have 3 models of the same grid. So on the left side, we have all the details included. That would be the nodal pricing model. On the right-hand side, we have the old zonal pricing model illustrated. And what we see here is that we have nodes that are grouped into price areas. And we also have the transfer capacities illustrated by means of aggregated capacity limits between the price areas. And then in between, we have the FBMC model, where we still group the nodes into price areas, but where we can address individual links in the network. So this is just a formulation of how we are usually representing nodal pricing. And the thing here is that the most important thing is the first constraint, showing that we do have an energy balance for all the individual nodes. And the second equation shows us that we are modeling the flows on the individual links. And the last inequalities show that we are restricting flows on individual lines. When we are using the zonal pricing of the ATC type, what we are doing is that we aggregate the net injections in nodes into net injections in zones. And we are representing transfers between zones in aggregated format, and we put limits on these aggregated flows. The difficulty in this is, of course, how we set these limits. And if we consider this ATC model compared to the nodal pricing, if we are just adding individual link capacities to set these ATC limits, then this model is a relaxation of the model, nodal pricing model, which will typically result in infeasible solutions. And in practice, what has been done in the ATC world is that we add restrictions. So we reduce the capacities on the lines or on the transfers between price areas. And then we end up in a trade-off situation. If we have too loose restrictions, we will have costly redispatch. If we have too tight restrictions, that will lead to too constrained market clearing. And that is what we have seen in Nord Pool during the last 20 to 25 years. And it's also directly influencing on the prices that we get. The remedies that we have been using in the Nordic areas so far is to have more price areas. In Norway, we had an increase from 2 to 5 price areas. And in Europe, and also now in the Nordic market, we have introduced this flow-based market coupling. So, well, I'll just give an intuition of what that is. This nodal pricing model can also be formulated by using these nodal power transfer distribution factors to calculate the flows on individual lines. This equation here. So that is kind of the intuitive way of understanding this FBMC model. We try to implement something like this constraint also in the aggregated model. So what we do here is that we still aggregate the net injections in the zones. So we have an aggregated area consisting of many nodes, usually. And then we can calculate the flow across individual lines by using something that is called zonal power transfer distribution factors that we multiply with the net injections in the zones to get an expression for the flows on the individual lines. And the last inequality shows how we are restricting flows between areas on these individual links. So in order to do this, we have to make a lot of assumptions. And we introduce a new terminology, I would say. First thing is to explain what a generation shift key is. A generation shift key gives the change in the net injection at a node relative to a change in the net position of the zone it belongs to. So in a way, a change in the net injection in the zone is allocated to all the nodes in the zone. And of course, this cannot be determined before the market has cleared. But still, if we are to formulate this, we have to determine this before market clearing. So we have to make some assumptions. And usually it's done by using a base case, anticipating grid topology, net positions, and corresponding power flows for each delivery period. One way of doing it is just to have a nodal weight for the net positions within each zone. But there are many different ways of doing it. In the beginning, Germany was said to have a uniform GSK, and so meaning that all nodes in a price area had the same weight in the calculations. So when we have decided these GSKs, we can compute these zonal PTDFs. And what we do is just to weight the GSKs by the nodal PTDFs in order to calculate a zonal PTDF. And that is what goes into these formulations. When we are using the nodal pricing model, typically we have physical limitations to all the elements in the network. In the FBMC model, traditionally, we are selecting critical branches or critical network elements. So what are these? The critical branches in the CWE was typically chosen as transmission lines, which are critical in the sense that it has like a maximum zone-to-zone PTDF larger than some threshold value. So there is a lot of discretion when it comes to choosing these. The TSOs were publishing the critical branches and their capacities, which is called remaining available margin before market clearing. In the Nordics, we are calling these critical branches critical network elements. And also, if we are to include N-1 criterion, we also call them critical network elements with contingency. So maybe some of you have heard about connects. This is what this really is. When it comes to this remaining available margin, that is the capacity that can be used in the day-ahead market. And that is typically calculated as the nominal capacity on an element minus some minus a deduction. And this deduction can have various reasons. It can be caused by flows on caused by transactions outside the day-ahead market, for instance, due to redispatching or bilateral trades, forward markets, and so on. It could be an adjustment value that is based on the TSO's knowledge, and it could also be like a safety margin, which is needed because this is also an approximated model. So the main point here is, I think, that there is a lot of discretion in this. If we are looking at sort of the characteristics of the FBMC, we can see that if this base case is feasible in the nodal model, it's also feasible in the FBMC model. If we're using the nodal pricing solution to set these GSKs, then it will be feasible. The optimal nodal price solution is feasible in the FBMC. And the objective function value must be greater than or equal to the objective function value of the nodal price solution, that is the benchmark. But that also indicates that even in the FBMC model, we can have a lot of infeasibility still. So it might be a need for redispatching also here. And I think my main point is that there is a lot of discretion in this procedure. You have to decide on these generation shift keys. You have to decide on what are the critical branches, or elements, or what are the contingencies which are going to be used. And this capacity of these critical elements is also a factor that is very important to determine. So I think in the interest of the time here, I think I would like to stop here, but I think there is a lot of work that needs to be done in this area still because of all these discretion that is left to the TSO. I also think that there is a lot of issues around the fact that it's not necessarily giving us a feasible solution, and that there is a need for redispatching or balancing service also. And in order to assess the efficiency of it, we should also consider the redispatch of the whole system that is needed in real time. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mette. Thanks, Kamma, and thanks, Arild. We have now 4 minutes for questions.